Honorable Senators, I further rearrange the order paper so that we go to order number 25. Clerk.
Order number 25, the Elections Amendment number 2 Bill, Senate Bills number 29 of 2024, second reading.
Majority Leader.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the Elections Amendment number 2 Bill, Senate Bill number 29 of 2024, be now read a second time. Mr. Speaker, this is a very interesting legislation. I have been at the Bomas of Kenya in 2013, 2017, and 2022, Mr. Speaker. As an party, it's really unfortunate. In fact, I'm speaking like this, Mr. Speaker, because we've just watched elections in the first world. That elections were held. I'm speaking like this, Mr. Speaker, because we've just watched elections in the first world. That elections were held. More than 150, I think 130 million people voted, Mr. Speaker. And by 3, 4, 5 hours after that, you get an indication of who has taken the lead. In fact, if you have an interesting candidate like the President-elect of the United States, Mr. Speaker, he did not even wait for other states to declare their results. Once it became apparent, Mr. Speaker, that he was going to garner the magical 270 Electoral College, Mr. Speaker, he went ahead and gave his victory speech. And the losing candidate also held back for a while, and eventually, less than 24 hours after the election, gave her concession speech, and life moves on, Mr. Speaker. In even more advanced democracies, Mr. Speaker, because a few months ago, I was in the UK when they were voting, and immediately, even on election day, you could hardly tell that there is any electoral process that is ongoing, Mr. Speaker. This intense litigation, agitation, and the fights that we have at Bomas, Mr. Speaker, are all a product of trust deficit. And the many legislations that we have passed here over the years in this House, most of the time, just a few days to election, Mr. Speaker, are to address some of these fears. And one of the things that I must appreciate about this bill that came out of, I must first declare, Mr. Speaker, that this is one of the so-called Nadco bills that came out of a negotiated dialogue process at the Bomas of Kenya, where yours truly was part and parcel of the team that sat there, and we had representation from the Azimio coalition, Mr. Speaker, and the side of Kenya Kwanza, Mr. Speaker. And there are many things that we felt Kenyans, when they came and made presentations before us, they continue to raise about our electoral processes, Mr. Speaker. You listen to some of the proposed laws, Mr. Speaker, that are being added into our election laws. If you are not careful, Mr. Speaker, our election law book may end up being the largest in the world very soon, Mr. Speaker, by the very simple principle that we want to put it in writing even the minutest of procedure, something that to other countries and to other people are rather obvious. But given that we are an extremely litigious country, and our judiciary doesn't help our cause, Mr. Speaker, because they agree even with people that you'd consider nuisance litigants, Mr. Speaker, who raise issues that are so mundane. But then, in typical fashion of our judiciary, sometimes, Mr. Speaker, they agree with them and they say, yeah, it's not written in law, it's not in our constitution, and therefore the petition has succeeded, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, we ended up litigating on very minute details of our electoral process, as such that in other countries, Mr. Speaker, are not things that people contest or consider about, argue about, Mr. Speaker. But given that this is our home, we don't have another home. We are the people. There are no other people, Mr. Speaker. We have to learn to live the way we are accustomed to live with each other. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, in the various clauses that form part of this bill, there are actually about, there are about 39 sections that are in this particular bill, Mr. Speaker. You will see and find yourself addressing many of the issues that have been of concern to Kenyans. And therefore, as we read about and give proposals in this particular bill, I hope that the House will eventually agree with us and put this in legislation. One last thing, Mr. Speaker, before I get into the details of the bill, that I appreciate about the genius of this legislation is that in all other elections, from 2017 and 2022, Mr. Speaker, we have fought in this House while trying to amend election laws, Mr. Speaker, a few months to the election time. Yet we know, if you read part of our election management processes, Mr. Speaker, what forms the basis of many of the electoral processes, Mr. Speaker, is the so-called Kriegler report that came up after the disputed 2007 elections. And one of the so obvious and quoted phrases and recommendations in that particular report, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that we as Parliament were indicted for changing electoral management processes laws just a few months to the electoral cycle, Mr. Speaker, that we do deals last minute that make it impossible or difficult for election managers, Mr. Speaker, to conduct our elections to the satisfaction of the country. And you know very well, Mr. Speaker, that we have perhaps the highest standard of election expectation, Mr. Speaker, in comparison with the rest of the world. We expect a near-perfect process, let alone the fact that you know that it's run by human beings, Mr. Speaker, who many a times they enter these results deep in the night, having not slept for more than 3 hours, but we argue none the same, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it is important to note that this time we have made the decision to make these laws more than 3 years before a general election, Mr. Speaker. And that is quite commendable, because it basically means, or about close to 3 years, Mr. Speaker, because it basically means that the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Mr. Speaker, will have sufficient time to acquaint themselves with all the provisions, Mr. Speaker, of our laws, as such that as they prepare to take the country into an election, Mr. Speaker, they will have learned of all our expectations, unlike has been the case previously, where we have amended election laws even 2 or 3 months before an election, and subsequently after that election gone ahead to fight and ask the IBC why they didn't do this or the other, of course ignoring the very obvious and basic fact that they did not actually have sufficient time to prepare. Let me get into the provisions of the bill, Mr. Speaker. Clause 2 of this bill proposes to amend Section 2 of the Act, which is election laws, Mr. Speaker, by providing for new definitions of terms of nomination, which is the term such as you insert, for example, a simple word. Remember what I mentioned earlier, that we argue even on some of the very basic things, that instead of just prescribing and saying that to vote you need a Kenyan passport, we want to propose it further and say that it must be valid, and therefore you have to put it in law. I don't think there is any other country where you'll find this in their legislation. But this is Kenya, like I've mentioned, and I've given a good history of how we find ourselves with this kind of arguments. And therefore, we want to make it clear in black and white that if you're using your passport as your primary tool of identification, then it must be valid. Rather too obvious for me, Mr. Speaker, but hey, that's who we are as a people. Let's proceed. Clause 3 of the bill, Mr. Speaker, is an amendment actually to Section 5 of our Act, which provides for registration of the voters. This is a point, Mr. Speaker, where there is a by-election. Another very, I lack the proper English vocabulary, Mr. Speaker, to actually explain this, but we have to do it anyway, because, like I have said, this is Kenya. You know, in Section 5 of the Act, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure Senator Bodi Halwale has sufficient vocabulary for this as well. Neither does my good friend Crystal actually have. Because you know that when there is a by-election, Mr. Speaker, we freeze the registration of voters in that particular electoral area. And it's part of our election regulations, but there was need and the feeling that you must make it actually an issue of statute, not just regulation, so that people know that any time there is proposed to be a by-election in a particular area, you freeze registration of voters in that particular election, in that particular region, and actually provide clarity. Listen to this, Senator Crystal, that the restriction is only in the geographical area where that by-election is to take place. That's Kenya for you, Mr. Speaker. So you'll find that in 3A, we'll provide that the persons registered as voters during the period when registration of voters is suspended by a reason or by-election shall not be eligible to contest in electoral area affected by the by-election. Mr. Speaker, Clause 4 of the bill, Mr. Speaker, seeks to amend Section 6 of the Act, which provides for inspection of registration of voters. We are deleting subsection 1 and 2 and substituting thereof with new subsections providing for the inspection of register of voters by members of the public and rectification of particulars of voters, as well as exceptions when IBC shall not be expected to rectify the particulars of the voters. This is a usual process where they normally pin the list of registration or registered voters in a particular polling station, just providing clarity. I have pointed earlier that some of these things are either definition or we are going deeper into the law to just make it more appealing. Clause 5, Mr. Speaker, is amending Section 8A, which is a deletion of subsection 3 and provides for audit of register of voters by a professional, reputable firm for purposes of first general election after the commencement of this act. You know very well, Mr. Speaker, that we have argued about the validity of our register of voters. I don't know if in other countries they have this, Mr. Speaker. I know for a fact that you have come from observing elections, Mr. Speaker, in some land very far away from this place. I don't know in your conversations or in your exit report, they had any conversations about audit of the registered list of voters. And therefore, because we don't trust or for some reason we want to confirm, we have provided that a professional audit firm, upon the passage of this act, Mr. Speaker, we shall expect the IBC to conduct, Mr. Speaker, an audit of the register. You know, in other countries, Mr. Speaker, that's why our elections are extremely expensive, Senator Osotsi. In other countries where you trust your independent institution, this is work that IBC on their own should have been left to do, you know, and clean it up. But of course, given the fact that we have provided, and remember the issue, you know, trust is an expensive affair. And I had explained why many of these issues actually stem from mistrust of the electoral process and the players in between. You can imagine how much it will cost the IBC to hire a firm to look into the list of registered voters. I think they're about 20 million, if I'm not wrong, or about thereabouts. Me and you and the Kenyan taxpayers will pay quite a tidy amount for that particular provision. But hey, let it be as it may. Clauses 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 and 13 of the bill is an amendment of sections 14, 16, 17, 19, 22, 23, and 24, and actually 25, by deleting the word nominations and substituting it with registration of candidates so as to differentiate the role of IBC and those of the registrar of political parties. Remember, there is a confusion in how the act presently is drafted where you cannot tell which is a part. Additionally, clauses 7 and 9 delete submission of party list in respect of parliamentary and county assemblies to IBC by political, Additionally, clauses 7 and 9 delete submission of party list in respect of parliament and county assemblies to IBC by political parties. Further, clause 10 of the bill proposes to delete section 22 and set out education requirement for a member of parliament or county assembly. These requirements, remember, have been declared unconstitutional in Wamboi and 10 others by the Speaker of the National Assembly in Constitutional Petition number 28 of 2021. So we're actually eventually removing those things that we're providing for education qualifications, Mr. Speaker, because you're saying you're representing people. And therefore, many of the people you represent, Senator Alwale, are not medical doctors like you. They have voted for you on account of they feel that you can represent them. And therefore, it was a feeling of Kenyans, and the courts have finally agreed with them. And I don't think we need to push this point further, that with regards to members of a county assembly and members of parliament, that they want to elect their own. The Bible says to each their own. If they feel that they want to elect a fellow who perhaps does not meet what we would know as at least a basic standard of a competent person to legislate and represent them, Mr. Speaker, like I've said, we are only humble servants of the people, and therefore we'll allow them to have it as they wish. Clause 14 of the bill proposes to amend Section 27 by inserting a new subsection to provide that a coalition party shall within 14 days of registration submit to IBC a copy of its nomination rules certified by the Registrar of Political Parties. Remember this issue of the coalition party. We argued here on the floor of this House about coalition political parties, and the same. I'm sure after the election, Senator Okongo Mugeni has since changed his views as opposed to what he had then, because of the challenges that they had in trying to run as a coalition political party. You remember the debate that was here. But at that time, you are like me. What you accuse me of being nowadays is what you were at that particular time, Mr. Speaker. Clause 15 of the bill proposes to amend Section 31, provides for nomination of political party candidates by deleting subsection 2, 2B, and 2C, 2E, and 2F, which provides that the IBC shall, upon the request of a political party, conduct and supervise nomination of candidates by the political party for presidential, parliamentary, or county elections in accordance with Article 88 of the Constitution. It's just our feeling, Mr. Speaker, that there can be a time where political parties will have matured to the level, Mr. Speaker, of allowing the IBC to actually conduct nominations for them, Mr. Speaker. And who knows, Mr. Speaker, if we were able to agree at the political parties level, Mr. Speaker, we could actually end up making it mandatory for all our political parties to do this, Mr. Speaker. But nonetheless, it's a decision of the political party. It's a right that you may not want to take it away from them. But we wanted to provide it in law, Mr. Speaker, so that if a political party feels that they don't have internal capacity to conduct a nomination process, Mr. Speaker, then they let it to IBC. Of course, I know it will be a very costly affair. I know this, Mr. Speaker, because I have run nomination, Mr. Speaker, and participated in the management of nomination of a political party, the UDA, Mr. Speaker, that conducted nomination exercises in about, I think, 40 plus counties. It's a very, very expensive affair, Mr. Speaker. Part B is you submit to the IBC the names and the person contesting the party primaries and the date of the party primaries for publication of this information in the Gazette notice. And you require also that the Parliament shall appropriate monies for the effective implementation of this section, Mr. Speaker. Such that basically what that means, Mr. Speaker, is that this exercise will be funded actually by the Kenyan public because they belong to these political parties. The only challenge is that we have provided the resources, but we have not made it mandatory for the political party to carry out its primary using the IBC. So the funds will be there, but it's the decision of the political party whether to use IBC or, Mr. Speaker, I am almost laughing when I remember about a certain political party that conducted their nomination electronically. And there was a big fight about password. Where is this password? I'm sure Senator Beatrice Ogola knows a thing or two about that password conversation that ensued actually in certain regions. So IBC has that mandate provided for in law, but upon the request of the political parties. Clause 16, Mr. Speaker, proposed to amend Section 32, which provides for the approval of a symbol for independent candidates by deleting the words nomination, day, and nomination, and substituting them with the words the date of registration and registration respectively. This is just about independent candidates and making sure that the process upon which they submit. Remember, when independent candidates want to submit a symbol which they're going to use in the election, Mr. Speaker. It's quite a long process. Clause 17 of the bill, Mr. Speaker, proposes to amend Section 33, which provides for the nomination of independent candidates. Mr. Speaker, just a few clerical things, ensuring that we clean that up. I don't intend to spend a lot of time on it. Clause 18 proposes to amend the Act by inciting new Section 33A to provide for publication in the Gazette of party candidates and independent candidates as registered to contest in a by-election. I said some of these provisions are rather too obvious, but we still must do the same. Clause 19 of the bill proposes to amend Section 34, which provides for nomination of party list members by inserting new Sections 8A and B to provide that a person can only be nominated as a member of a county assembly. If such a person is a registered voter in a ward within a county, the person is to be nominated, and the need to ensure equitable representation from all wards comprising the respective county as regards nomination. Just providing clarity. Part of what Senator Crystal Lasige was trying to do last week or a few weeks ago, Mr. Speaker, by ensuring that all persons with disabilities, Mr. Speaker, alongside all actually marginalized groups, special interest groups, that's the right word actually that I was looking for, are nominated. Further to that, Mr. Speaker, there is a practice by political parties, and includes my own political party, of imposing people who are not resident of a particular county to form part of the members of a county assembly of that county. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I find to be completely unfair to the residents of that particular county. And therefore, I appreciate this new provision in law so that now it becomes abundantly clear that in nominating members of the county assembly, you can only nominate from registered voters of that particular county, Mr. Speaker. This takes away powers from the big boys of our political parties, but I feel it's a good provision. There have been, I know of stories, Mr. Speaker, and we've had petitions actually, including petitions brought to this House, Mr. Speaker, where the only time a certain MCA was ever seen in a county assembly is the day when they went to take the oath of office. In fact, on the day of the swearing in, they were seen in certain towns asking for directions to the county assembly because they don't know even where the county assembly of that particular county is, yet they are members of a county assembly. So I want to urge members to support this so that political parties can only nominate voters from that particular county, Mr. Speaker. Clause 20 of the bill proposes to amend the Act by inserting new Section 38A to provide for designation of polling stations by IBC and publishing them in the Gazette at least 3 months before the date of any election. You know, we have argued before about creation of polling stations. Senator Eddie has a thing or two to say about this. Mr. Speaker, I read part of things he has said about against the IBC elsewhere. So we are making it now provided for in law, Eddie, that 3 months to the election, IBC must publish by Gazette notice the list of all the polling stations so that Kenyans know, they can check, and we don't have issues arising of saying, what was the name of that fellow? Jose Camargo created certain polling stations. Clause 22 of the bill proposes to repeal and replace Section 39, which provides for the determination and declaration of results and substitute it with a new section. The new section proposes that results at the polling station shall be final, and the presidential election shall be tallied, announced and declared, and electronically transmitted before all other elective positions. Further, the new section has omitted provisions providing for, 1, where there is a discrepancy between electronically transmitted and physically delivered results, the results, which is an accurate record of results tallied, verified, and declared at the respective station, shall prevail. B, any failure to transmit or publish election results in an electronic format shall not invalidate the results as announced and declared, because this is technology. Things happen, Mr. Speaker. Part C is a requirement for IEBC to establish a mechanism for live streaming of results as announced at the polling station to facilitate public information, part of the public trust building mechanism, so that IEBC has part of its system, ways in which after the declaration of the presidential election result at Kapmaso Primary School in Kabianga Ward, where I vote, Mr. Speaker, I should be able to visibly check and confirm, because unless you have somebody who was at Kapmaso at the time of declaration of that result, Mr. Speaker, at Bomas, sometimes it's difficult to verify. Therefore, the easier thing to do is to make this information public so that I can easily check and confirm that if they announce that candidate X secured 400 votes, that is what is reflected on the IEBC portal. Clause 23 of the bill proposes to amend Section 44, which provides for technology to provide that the Commission shall ensure that the intellectual property to the technology is vested in the Commission. Senator Eddy should know why this forms part of that conversation. A supplier of the technology to be used shall not be found guilty of violating any procurement law or committed any crime anywhere in the world. Additionally, this is about open the server conversation, Mr. Speaker. And the 2017 one was the servers are asleep, Mr. Speaker, somewhere in France. This is part of addressing and providing clarity to that. Clause 24 of the bill proposes to amend Section 44, which provides for the complementary mechanism for identification of voters by inserting the words transmission of election results and mandating IEBC to make regulations for better carrying into effect provisions of Section 44, part of what I had mentioned earlier. Clause 25 of the bill deletes Section 45, which provides for the conditions under which an MP may be recalled. These provisions were declared unconstitutional in the Katiba Institute and another versus the Constitution AG in the Constitution Petition number 209. Clause 26 proposes to delete the provisions of Section 46 1B, and that required the petition to recall a member of parliament must be signed by a petitioner who was registered to vote in the election in respect of which the recall is sought, and that the petition must be accompanied by an order of the High Court. These provisions were also declared unconstitutional, Mr. Speaker. Clause 28 proposes to repeal Section 74 of the Act, which provides for the settlement of certain electoral disputes by the IEBC, since the mandate is now a function of the PPDT, Mr. Speaker, as provided in the Political Parties Act of 2011, Mr. Speaker, just providing clarity. 29 of the bill proposes to amend Section 75, which provides for the county election disputes by deleting the requirements that appeals to the High Court shall be on matters of law only, and inserting new Section 5 to provide that the decision of the High Court on appeal on the validity of the election of a member of a county assembly shall be final. Clause 30 proposes to amend Section 82 of the Act, which provides for the scrutiny of votes by providing that a court may extend a scrutiny of votes beyond the polling station or areas mentioned in the pleadings, Mr. Speaker. A rather obvious provision, but those who practice law in our courts like you, Mr. Speaker, know that this has been limited, actually the limitation of many election petitions, where perhaps given that election petitions are time-bound, Mr. Speaker, sometimes a lawyer either forgets sometimes a lawyer forgets, Mr. Speaker, to file in many of their contested election results, Mr. Speaker, and later on in the court process, they are denied the opportunity to provide for scrutiny, even when it becomes rather too obvious that an opening of a particular voting station, Mr. Speaker, will help the court in making the determination. Part 32, Mr. Speaker, Clause 32 of the bill provides to amend Section 85, which provides for appeals to the Court of Appeal in respect to members of the National Assembly, Senate, or the office of the county governor, by deleting the requirements that appeal shall be on matters of law only, and inserting a new subsection 5 to provide that the decision of the Court of Appeal shall be final. I'm sure Senior Counsel Okongo Mogeni who shall be seconding this and was part of the Nadco process, shall expound more of this. Clause 33 of the bill proposes to insert new section 87A, 87B, and 87C to provide for the appointment by Parliament of an independent firm to carry out an evaluation of the electoral process after a general election. The evaluation shall include the review of the legal framework, processes and costs associated with the electoral process, and propose new provisions require preparation of a report and submission to Parliament within 90 days of the appointment of the independent firm. Just to ensure, Mr. Speaker, that at the end of every election, Mr. Speaker, we provided for a firm to audit the process in its entirety and lead Parliament in passing legislation such as this. Senator Ledama, you are not in the House, but I mentioned earlier that mistrust is what we are trying to cure in many of these proposals that are here. Otherwise, in other parts of the world, many of the proposals that are here will appear like obvious things. And therefore, to clean up our processes, what the bill is proposing is that after every electoral cycle, IEBC procures the services of an independent audit firm to audit the entire process from start in the preparation of the election to election day to declaration of results and lead Parliament, including the cost of what it costs the taxpayers, Mr. Speaker, to run that election, and finally submit a report to Parliament so that Parliament can make independent decisions, Mr. Speaker, of how to further clean up our electoral processes, Mr. Speaker, or review certain costs or certain decisions that we have provided for in law that make it extremely expensive to run our elections. Remember, our elections costs are legendary, Mr. Speaker, and we have mentioned why this. Finally, Mr. Speaker, is a clause 33, which I have actually explained that particular clause 33. Therefore, as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I wish to state that this is a very important bill, and therefore I want to urge honorable senators to support it. This is about what brings you to this House and the people that you represent. Elections are extremely important because they are the tools which forms actually the chance for the citizen to speak and exercise Article 1 of our Constitution directly, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, we are duty-bound as Parliament to provide and make it possible for them to exercise that constitutional provision with a lot of clarity. Senator, with those very many remarks, Mr. Speaker, Senator Okongo Omogeni was part of the Nadco team at Bomas of Kenya. Nadco 2, actually. I know Senator Ledama was part of the first one, and therefore has a good understanding as well of this bill. Therefore, I want to grant him the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to second this bill. I thank you.
Before the senior counsel seconds your bill, Majority Leader, I would want to give you the comfort that part of what you said in the process of moving your bill is an inquiry as to a return or an exit report from the observation that we had with the elections conducted just in the United States of America. And the issue is about the trust deficit, which that report will speak to. And it will answer a number of the concerns which we are trying to cure in this particular bill. I would like to give you the comfort that the team indeed represented the House in doing what it was sent to do. Senator Olekina has confirmed that he was in Nadco 1, where yours truly was also a member, and so we participated in this process leading to the Nadco 2, where now I would like to ask Okongo Omogeni to second the bill. Senior Counsel, Senator Okongo Omogeni.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to second this bill that has been moved by Senator for Kericho. Mr. Speaker, for the record, you know, I went to a school that is in a village where Senator Cheruiyot comes from, in Kabianga. So it's my pleasure to have served with him in Nadco. And Mr. Speaker, without the spirit of give and take, we will not have reached where we are today. So I want to thank him and the members that represented the UDA coalition for coming with a spirit of give and take. We did not get everything that we wanted as Azimio, and I'm sure that there are positions that were not representing the UDA coalition, but that they agreed to accommodate in the spirit of give and take. And Mr. Speaker, the spirit in Nadco was to ensure that when we go to the next elections, Mr. Speaker, the person who wins the confidence of Kenyans, the person who garners the majority of votes, Mr. Speaker, does not face a contestation in the Supreme Court. We hope, Mr. Speaker, we'll reach a situation where we'll have the person losing an election conducting himself like Biden. I think in the USA last week, within 2 days, President Biden, who was not a candidate, but whose party, the Democratic Party, had lost an election, placed a call to President Trump, who had won through the Republican Party, and said in a democracy there must be a winner and a loser, and he was welcoming him to White House so that he can assist in managing the transition. So I hope, senators, that you will support these amendments to the elections laws, which is trying to make it easy, make it transparent, and make the path to declaration of a winner in a presidential election much easier and more transparent. In fact, Mr. Speaker, one of the issues that we really fought about was what is, I think, in clause, I think it's clause, in clause 39 of the bill. You know, Mr. Speaker, in the United States of America, you will start predicting the winner of a presidential election going by results coming from states. And Mr. Speaker, what this bill is proposing is that we now allow polling stations to have returning officers, so that if we are in Ikolomani, Mr. Speaker, by the time we are done with the counting and tallying of votes in that polling station, the returning officer will give final results and declare the winner from that polling station. So that by midnight, we should be getting results telling us, in Iborabu constituency, Boni Galwale, if he will be a candidate in 2027, I don't know whether he has presidential ambitions, it tells you Boni Galwale has taken Ikolomani. And if Senator Cheragei will be running for Gen Zs, we are told in Iborabu constituency, Senator Cheragei was number 3 or number 1. That is the spirit behind this proposed amendment, so that we don't need to wait for the commissioners in Nairobi to tell us who has won in Ikolomani. I mean, if even in Iborabu, Mr. Speaker, we have tallied votes from all the polling stations, by the close of the day, we should see a 411 telling us that candidate A has taken Iborabu. By the time we wake up in the morning, we should be knowing from all our constituencies, 290 of them, who is leading in a particular constituency. That makes the voting, the counting, tallying of results more transparent than what we have now, where you wait for returning officers to walk all the way to Nairobi before IEBC can declare who is a winner. So this is a game changer, honorable senators, that even if you want to contest a presidential election, you can narrow down to the polling stations that are contested. You don't need to sue the chairman of IEBC. You can actually select the few polling stations which are contentious, and you move to court challenging results from those particular polling stations. Mr. Speaker, also because of the high stake in presidential elections, we are making it mandatory that the first election that should be counted and tallied is the presidential election results. So if we close the voting in a polling station, Mr. Speaker, the first seat that should have votes counted is the seat of the president. Once it's done, you move to the county governor, senator, member of National Assembly, women, county women rep, and then you finish with MCA in that order. That's what we are proposing in this bill. It's all in the spirit of making it transparent so that we adopt the system that we see in the US, where by midnight you'll be told Trump or Harris has carried Florida. That becomes the end. Next, you'll be told Texas has gone to candidate X. And then the second thing, Mr. Speaker, is to adopt technology. What makes the results to trickle in as quickly as we saw in the US is because they are using technology, Mr. Speaker. If you employ technology, you get your results faster. I don't know what is the experience of honorable senators here, but in my seat, Senate in Nyamira, I waited for 2 nights. 2, Mr. Speaker. Because people are doing manual counting, you wait for 2 nights. And if you are not sure about your victory, you don't even break to go and have a meal. You can't even go and have a bath. But if we embrace technology, we can do our tallying much faster, you know, and we get our results almost the following day. Why should we vote on a Tuesday and you're being declared on a Thursday? That waiting is too long. So I hope when we get new commissioners in IBC, they will bring in technology that brings really change. In Brazil, you conclude elections and in the next Senator Chiragei went to Brazil, I think, in the company of Governor Mutula, who was then Senator, Senior Counsel James Orengo, and they saw real time. But the problem in this country is that once people get positions, like you become a commissioner in IBC, you think more of how you're going to make money from that technology, instead of looking at bringing in a technology that will make the running of elections more efficient. If Brazil can use technology and declare elections within 3 hours, why not Kenya? Are we cursed? Mr. Speaker, are we a cursed country? I mean, and we use more money. If you follow, you'll find that we are paying more money for that technology than those other countries. And I've heard Senator Sige telling me that even in the US, it took a few hours. I think within 2 hours after the close of elections, results were trickling in. Really, we need, Mr. Speaker, when we get a chance to vet the new commissioners to IEBC, we should vet and ensure that the people who are getting a chance to serve in that commission are men and women of integrity, who can put public interest ahead of selfish interests of wanting to enrich themselves, Mr. Speaker. We don't want to hear those scandals we read some times ago about IEBC. Mr. Speaker, I want to fully support the proposed amendment that makes nomination of members of county assemblies, as proposed in clause 19, to be people who are registered in those wards. The Speaker, the only thing we did not agree, and I hope we can find agreement, is that this should also be extended to our constituencies and our counties. If you are being nominated to represent a constituency in Starehe, Nairobi, you should ordinarily be a member who votes in that constituency, Senator Mutinda. If you are being nominated from West Mogirango in Nyamira, you should be somebody registered in that constituency. I've had agitation. Yesterday I was confronted by Senator Asige here, pitching that nominated senators should have money for county operation offices. If you need that money, Mr. Speaker, we should ensure that you come from that county. Because if you get money to run your office, it should be Senator Mutinda, Nairobi, running our office in Nairobi. Senator Sige from Mombasa, running our office in Mombasa. Senator Beatrice Oyomo from county of Homa Bay, having an office in Homa Bay, running our county office in Homa Bay. Ordinarily, you should be somebody who votes in that county or in that constituency or in that ward. So I'll be maybe asking senators, honorable senators, to reconsider whether clause 13 should be extended so that we don't just say MCA voting in that ward. Let us extend that spirit, that intent to be applicable also in constituencies and in our counties. I think it's a fair thing to do. The other point I want to make to contribute on, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of appointing polling stations, as proposed in clause 20, which is amending section 38A. Mr. Speaker, I was privileged in 2017 to be one of the lawyers who was appearing for Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga in a presidential election petition. And you know, Mr. Speaker, some of the issues that crop up in that election petition is a situation where returning officers would tell us that I decided to set up a polling station in a certain place because nomads had moved. There were no people in the designated polling station. I mean, we can't do that. Polling station should be known by voters. So what these amendments to section 38 is proposing is that IEBC must appoint a place that is publicized and that is known to the voters. So if we're in Nairobi and you say polling station is Stare, and for example, that should be what the voters in that constituency know, and that's where they should go and vote. If you are in West Mogrango and you say one of the polling stations is Girigiri Primary School, that should be gazetted, publicized, and known to the voters. We should not have a situation where capriciously Electoral Commission officials can set up polling stations that are not known to anybody. 3, Mr. Speaker, as you know, you practice as a lawyer, and we have had serious problems with time. If you are doing a presidential election petition, Senator Cheragay, you know the time within which you must sit, sift through cartons of documents, prepare your petition, and file. And then when you appear before the Supreme Court, they will tell you, you cannot do scrutiny in polling stations that you did not name in your presidential election petition. Lawyers are also human beings, Mr. Speaker. We are not machines. So we are giving leeway to the election petition courts to look at issue of allowing scrutiny in polling stations beyond the time that is given, so that you don't need to restrict a council and say, if you didn't name your polling stations where you need scrutiny within 7 days, we will not allow you. We want to give our judges an opportunity to hear lawyers, exercise judicial discretion, and if they think a basis has been laid, then they can extend time and allow scrutiny. The spirit of Article 159 of our Constitution is to do substantive justice and not pay undue regard to technicalities of procedure. I know those who practice law in this House, like you, Mr. Speaker, you understand how important this particular amendment will be to lawyers. Then they proposed amendments to Section 82, access to information, including technology used in an election. You know, we are trying to cure the problems that we all saw during the election petition that was filed ensuing from the 2022 general election. In 2017, Mr. Speaker, if you remember, the Supreme Court issued an order for that technology to be released. We were told the lawyers in France had not woken up. When the lawyers in France woke up, we were told the technology is also hosted in USA. The lawyers in USA were asleep. We waited till 8 p.m., which is in the US was about midday. Still, technology was not availed. So we are making a proposal here, Mr. Speaker, that the Commission should ensure that there is access of information, including any technology that is used in an election. Because, Mr. Speaker, this is public money. When we are employing technology, we are using taxpayers' money, Mr. Speaker. And we want Kenyans to have easy access to information so that everything is transparent. The spirit in Articles 80, 81, 82 is that our elections should be transparent, they should be verifiable. There is no way an election can be very viable if we are not making technology available. That is in the spirit of making Kenyans to have faith and confidence in an electoral process. It was our prayer in Nadco, Mr. Speaker, that in the 2027 elections, we should not have a dispute. Everything should be so transparent that at the time we conclude the elections and a candidate is declared, every Kenyan should accept that truly that is the choice of the people. The other problem, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure most of us who are candidates have experienced, is the issue of delay, which is being addressed in clause 39. The proposal there is that each polling station should have a returning officer, and once you tally the votes, you make a declaration. But there has been a problem before. You know that you can have a polling station that is the closest to the constituency tallying center. But there can be delay, unreasonable delay, in releasing results. You finish counting even at 8 p.m., but the presiding officer will tell you, I'm not able to announce results till the following day. What we are proposing here, Mr. Speaker, if you read clause 4, we are saying that the results should be tallied within 2 hours. Within 2 hours, results should be released, everything fed into the electronic system, and everybody has access to the results. And if you delay, there should be consequences. If you unreasonably delay announcement of results, there should be consequences. In 2013, I did an election petition for a candidate in an election in Nyaribari Church. And Mr. Speaker, while we were looking through the transmission of results to the tallying center at Gusii, we discovered that the polling station that was closest to the tallying center was the last one to declare and transmit results, Mr. Speaker. And when we requested the court and the court ordered scrutiny, Mr. Speaker, we found that there was a lot of tampering of results from that polling station. So at times, presiding officers delay release of results deliberately so that they can manipulate the results, interfere with certain documents, okay, before the results are announced. So this idea of giving the presiding officers and the returning officers time is to ensure that there is no opportunity given to the presiding officer or to the returning officers to manipulate the outcome. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, I know we have not prescribed in these amendments that IEBC should assist political parties in carrying nomination. But, Mr. Speaker, I think time has come for political parties to allow IEBC to conduct nominations for parties. There are many regions in this country, Mr. Speaker, where nomination means everything. If you win, you are as good as a member of parliament. Lawyers will tell you, including Cheragei and yourself, that Law Society of Kenya conducts its elections using IEBC. It's not prescribed in any law. But because they want transparency, they want to build confidence in that process, they have invited IEBC to preside over and conduct elections on behalf of Law Society of Kenya. Why can't my party, the largest party I believe in Kenya, ODM, why can't ODM allow IBC to conduct its nominations? Why can't UDA allow IEBC to conduct its election? In fact, in the same spirit, Mr. Speaker, all other bodies, public bodies, including KOTU, headed by my friend Atwoli, they should allow IEBC to assist in running or in conducting of elections for officials of those bodies. If Atwoli is a popular person, why should it be that you go to Tom Mboya and people come and shout and then you become the Secretary General? Allow IEBC to set up mechanisms in all counties, Mr. Speaker. And our Mzee Atwoli, who is very popular within the labor movement, will be elected in elections that enjoy the confidence of the workers of Kenya and any other person. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleague, senators, to kindly support this elections amendment bill that was developed through a bipartisan spirit with the majority side and the minority side that is trying to do a cleanup in our electoral process and to ensure that as we gear towards 2027 elections, we create a legal regime that will have transparent, verifiable, and uncontested elections. With those remarks, Mr. Speaker, I second.
Now, Senator, Senior Counsel Lukongo Mogeni, in your reference to the political parties, you made reference to one party you called UDA. The name they prefer is the UDA, United Democratic, not UDA, but UDA. Now, Honorable Senators, I propose the question that the Elections Amendment number 2, Bill, Senate Bills number 29 of 2024, be now read a second time. I will invite members who are keen to contribute to this particular bill to make their contributions, and I'll ask the Honorable Senator from Nandi, Samson Cherargei, to proceed to make his contributions to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I have listened keenly to the members of Nadco move ably the bill, although, Mr. Speaker, if you remember, you denied me the right to appear before the Nadco committee, but I'm happy that I have now opportunity to have my views being heard in a neutral environment, because, Mr. Speaker, I remember maybe that opportunity was politically corrected, guided, unlike what we are doing here, Mr. Speaker. So, and I'm happy the Parliamentary Service Commissioner has moved ably, the majority leader, and of course at one point you sat also as a member of Nadco committee, Mr. Speaker, and therefore I'm happy the Parliamentary Service Commissioner, who is a senior counsel, is here today in the evening, Mr. Speaker. I don't know whether he's aware that catering services are supposed to be outsourced, where food of members of parliament will be brought. We don't know the security, and I'm told the person who is pushing outsource of catering services is one of the members in Parliamentary Service Commission. And we are watching keenly. We shall oppose such a move because we are the employees. Now that you have mentioned Francis Atwoli as a popular unionist, we might need the services of Francis Atwoli in this parliament. You cannot outsource our food or catering services to individuals who want to use us as a guinea pigs in giving things, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, that was just on a lighter note for it's rare to have commission of PSC in the House, but now that we have, you should know. Mr. Speaker, number 2, the cost of elections in this country, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Cherargei, there is an intervention from Senior Counsel. He wants to inform you. Are you ready to be informed?
I can be informed.
Very well, Senator Omogeni, proceed.
Yes, just to inform Senator Cherargei, my good friend, that I'm not aware of the alleged outsourcing of catering services by a Parliamentary Service Commission, and to also make it clear to the people of Nyamira who may be watching that I'm certainly not one of those commissioners who are pushing for the outsourcing of catering services.
So are you, Senator Omogen, are you saying that there is a push at the same time you're not one of them?
I'm hearing it from Senator Cherargei. He seems to be highly connected to PIC commissioners. I saw him enjoying a cup of tea prepared by our staff, and I thought the food we serve is delicious and very tasty for our members. So I'm absolutely not aware. I just want that to be on record. And if there was such a push, certainly Senator of Nyamira, Commissioner representing Senate, is not one of the members pushing the outsourcing of catering services, Mr. Speaker, for members of Parliament. I just wanted that to be on record.
That information was meant to be to you, but will also affect the entire membership of this House, Senator Cherargei. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What I want to confirm is it is the highest level, Mr. Speaker. Maybe the Commissioner, Senator Okongo Mugeni, Senior Counsel, Mr. Speaker, should be informed, and I hope they will not allow that to happen, because we will resist any such move. Mr. Speaker, secondly, Mr. Speaker, I'm informed that the American ambassador, Megan Whitman, has resigned. I want to pass our deepest appreciation for her tour of duty in the country and for being supportive to government, Mr. Speaker. You remember under her tenure, the Kenyan government was able to work closely with the Haiti government to bring peace and security. Mr. Speaker, and also he organized, Mr. Speaker, Ambassador Megan Whitman, the U.S. State
Senator
visit.
Cherargei,
Yes.
I want you to confine your contributions to what yesterday you were reminded by the Honorable Senator Boni about the relevance of your comments to the motion at hand.
But you know, Mr. Speaker, U.S. is one of the biggest donors to elections in this country. She was very instrumental. She was among the people who are in bombers with you. I'm surprised. You should be appreciated.
As you do that,
yes,
let it be
I'm tying up because, Mr. Speaker,
this particular bill.
Yes, I'm tying up with what is happening, the Nadco, the genesis of Nadco. You know, the embassies and the government, U.S. is one of the heaviest funders, not only to peace and security, but to elections in this country. And she was very supportive, and we wish her well in her tour of duty. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, you have to appreciate the cost of election is very expensive. Last year, and that has been my argument, Mr. Speaker, the last election of 2022, Kenya spent a whooping 35.8 billion Kenya shillings. That translates to 2,000 shillings, Mr. Speaker, per voter, which is very expensive across the world. 2,000 per voter, which is too high, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we must agree that the election business in Kenya should not be live and dead. You are in the U.S., you saw people voting by mail. You saw people accepting results graciously. And I'm happy in the U.S., Mr. Speaker, and I heard my brother Senator talking about Biden inviting Donald Trump to the White House. Was it today? Or today? And therefore, we want peaceful transition where people go into an election, contest, you lose fairly, you accept. I think what is happening, Mr. Speaker, and you have noted in some of your comments, that there is deficit of trust among African countries and more so Kenyans. We don't trust each other. I think the only time Kenyans will trust each other about elections is when Jesus Christ is the returning officer. Because the fact we are becoming too prescriptive on election laws in this country. We are becoming too subjective to the election laws in this country. We are prescribing even how a returning officer should sign the declaration form at the polling station, at the county tallying center, at the national tallying center, Mr. Speaker. We are aware of how we don't have trust. It happened in 2007, 2008, Mr. Speaker. The tampering of elections, the problem in this country is lack of deficit to the institutions we have. People don't even trust Parliament. They don't trust judiciary. They don't trust executive, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, it behooves to us that the institutions that the Constitution have built, we should trust, Mr. Speaker. And that is why the cost of election is very high in this country. Even as we talk, Mr. Speaker, as of today, The pending bill that IEBC has that has not paid their people, the matatus, the people that provided service and goods, stands at whooping over 2.05 billion Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. While I agree, Mr. Speaker, with a number of, I think this proposal is just a cleanup of the Elections Act, because having served as the chair of JLAG in the last session, Mr. Speaker, we did a number of amendments, elections, push and pull, between the National Assembly and the Senate. Mr. Speaker, outside the basic laws on basic issues Kenyans affect, the highest legislated matter in this House and in this country is the issue of elections. We go to an election, we notice a problem, we come back and legislate. The other day, we didn't trust the ICT, the IT to use of technology elections. Now we want to trust it. The other time we were told there was Jose Carmago somewhere. The other time we were being told the satellites servers are in France, and you remember the famous word Fungua server. Mr. Speaker, others were saying it is in the US. There is time difference, Mr. Speaker. And I think it is important that we need to agree. I'm happy in one of the section 2 of the Elections Act, we have amended to include ID as identification as Kenyan passport, which is good. And the registration of candidate, I think those are cleaner. Mr. Speaker, on clause number 3A is suspended. I agree that during by-election or during referendum, somebody who is not a voter or who has not registered that time during referendum and by-election, the registration and opening and inspection of voters' register should be suspended until the by-election and referendum is done. And Mr. Speaker, I agree. I think in Mutula Kilonso's case, when he passed on, the victim of such was the sister to the current governor of Makueni, since she was not registered as a voter. So it is now better that if a by-election is happening in Vihiga or in Banisa, for example, if I come from Banisa but I vote in Nairobi, the law should not allow me to participate in election of Banisa. And I agree with this provision, so that we don't have ambulance chasers for elect parliamentary seat. You remember the famous political ambulance chaser is one by Babayo Ferdinand Waititu, where he was contesting in Embakasi, when unfortunately the former MP was killed, that used to come from Kiambu, who used to work as a unionist. He left here and went and contested. When it came an opportunity of becoming the governor of Kiambu, he left here and went to contest. So this provision will cut lane. In fact, Governor Sonko was also trying to be an expert, where he was now, after failing to run here, he wanted to run in Mombasa. Yet I am sure that he was a voter in this city. So we need to ensure that even people like Senator Kalwale would want to run for governor. We don't want somebody who is running in Nairobi as an MP decides to wake up one day and run for governor in Kakamega, yet those people don't know who you are. So let us bring sanity and hygiene in our politics, Mr. Speaker. On the issue of Section 6, elections before the date of election, I agree, within 60 days is sufficient to rectify your particulars as a voter and also to give you a chance. Even in by-election, like now what is happening in Banisa, there is a ward in Kakamega that has similar challenges after the MCA was killed. The issue of referendum, I agree that 60 days is sufficient period to rectify your particulars as a voter in that region, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the fourth point that I wanted to make is in section 27. Mr. Speaker, within a coalition political party, for example, Azimio, I remember, Mr. Speaker, before we went to elections of 2022, some of us who served in the 10th session, we were being pushed. I remember Otsotsi was in the National Assembly, the Lower House. Mr. Speaker, we were being pushed to amend to create what we call coalition political party. Mr. Speaker, and the proponents then were in power, and they came up with something called Azimio coalition. And I'm happy when it came to the new session, the definition of coalition party became a challenge. And we are now where we are in the beginning, because now with the broad base, those things are no longer relevant. Mr. Speaker, and I think when a coalition agreement should be submitted, a copy, to register political parties. Mr. Speaker, are you aware, in the last session, it is only Kenya Kwanza coalition agreement that was given to register political parties that was made public. No one made public the Azimio coalition agreement up to today, unless there is contrary information outside there. So we want everybody to be equal before the law, Mr. Speaker. No, you know, Mr. Speaker, Senator Otsosi was in the lower house. He could not have been aware of what was happening.
Senator Otsosi,
Mr. Speaker, now he's in the upper house. He can know what is happening. I'm just informing.
Senator Otsosi, you know how to catch the eye of the
Yes,
Speaker.
Mr.
Senator
Speaker.
Cherargei, proceed.
As a deputy party leader of ODM and a senior member of broad-based government, he should hold these horses, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, what we are advising is to clean up, Mr. Speaker, and ensure, Mr. Speaker, that it is delivered. Mr. Speaker, Senator Otsosi would have allowed me to quickly finish so that when he's contributing and can make his comments. Mr. Speaker, in section 34, I agree. Mr. Speaker, can you believe you get an MCA in Wajir, but he was nominated from Nairobi? He doesn't know even where Wajir County is or County Assembly. You get in Kericho, in Vihiga. These political slakings and slakings must be stopped, Mr. Speaker. I agree. We cannot let us nominate women, people living with disability, that come from that ward, from Kisumu, Mr. Speaker. From Awendo, Papa Audit, let that be registered there, Mr. Speaker. We don't want people who smile before the political party leaders and they are being vetted in hotel rooms to have opportunity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we are aware of political party leaders who vet people in the hotel rooms and going to Santorini, Mr. Speaker, to get opportunity to be nominated, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Otsosi, what's your point of order?
Mr. Speaker, is it right for my friend Senator Cherargei to claim that it is bad for people to smile before party leaders? Does it imply that people are supposed to cry before the party leaders?
Senator Cherargei, that particular point of order insinuating on the part of the leaders of political parties is not the proper language to utilize in the House.
Mr. Speaker, let me rephrase, Mr. Speaker, that some people, some individuals, it is good to smile to political party leaders, it is good to get angry at them, but I'm saying some political party leaders, and you know the guilty are always afraid, Mr. Speaker, the Bible says what? Some political party leaders are known to vet the nominees, Mr. Speaker, in hotel rooms and in Santorini, Mr. Speaker. We are aware, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point of order,
I'm saying some, Mr. Speaker. I'm using the word some.
Take your seat. There's a point of order from Senator
Just before that statement, is it right for the senior ranking member, the Senator of Nandi, to insinuate that it is only women and people living with disability that can be nominated? As it is today, the current CS of Finance has been a nominee from the National Assembly, and that was a man. So it is not only women that are nominated. Even in this House, we have Senator Chimera, we have Senator Mbogo, and they are not women. And, Honorable Speaker, some of us, like me, is nominated. You cannot say I got my nomination through a smile. I'm beyond a smile, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Cherargei, the chair directs that you confine your contributions, check your language, and withdraw the statement that make reference
Mr.
to
Speaker,
members
Mr.
having been vetted in hotel rooms. That is not
Mr.
parliamentary.
Speaker, I've said some...
And confine your contributions to proper language. Senator Cherargei, that is the directions from the chair. I'm warning you so that you do what is right as a ranking member of this House.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, can I rephrase? I've said some political party leaders. I didn't say all, Mr. Speaker. And number two, I've said, Mr. Speaker, I have been in politics long enough to know some of these things, Mr. Speaker. I might be young, but I know so many things that many people don't know. And Mr. Speaker, I want to rectify, anybody can be nominated by political parties to serve as senators, members of parliament, and I agree with the information by my Senator Ogola. If you know you are nominated by merit, why worry? Mr. Speaker, I'm saying, I'm calling out political party leaders who are political briefcase parties, that when they get chance to nominate, they go for other conditions, which my learned senior and law lecturer smiles and nods because I have shared with him, Mr. Speaker. Finally, Mr. Speaker, because my time is spent.
Honorable members, order.
My
Allow
time
Senator
is
Cherege
spent.
to conclude.
Let me conclude. I have abandoned long time ago my sister. The commission shall appoint a place on the issue of presidential declaration of results, Mr. Speaker. I agree the chairman of IEBC should have opportunity to declare the president-elect, Mr. Speaker.
Order,
because,
Senator
Mr.
Sotsi. Allow the
Speaker,
senator
we
to
don't want
conclude.
to go, Mr.
Order.
Speaker, where the Cherera 4 tried to do. I agree that the person who should declare the president-elect and deputy president-elect should be the chairman of IEBC. We don't want to go to Cherera 4 debacle, which almost brought this country to instability, Mr. Speaker. So I agree with your wisdom that you did bring that at least, Mr. Speaker, the IEBC chairperson should declare the president-elect and deputy president-elect. On the issue of electronically transmitting results, we are in the era of technology. 2 hours is enough. Let us know, Mr. Speaker, if we are not careful with the current Gen Z with technology, we can always know who is winning or who is not winning. So I agree on the issue of electronic publishing of results. We are tired, you know, CROs and county can be hijacked as they come through Kericho somewhere in Awasi, and they can disappear with the results, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the issue of auditing, Mr. Speaker, on the issue of auditing, I agree after 1 year we should audit. I agree that your committee, JLAC, should give us what was the outcome of presidential and national elections within 1 year. That should be sufficient to give us audit, Mr. Speaker. This is a very good legislation. One thing I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, you remember in conclusion, there are a number of MCAs who have been complaining that they were not given chance, Mr. Speaker. We need to rectify on the issues that are within elections. Let this country have trust in our institutions, Mr. Speaker. I agree, Mr. Speaker, with your senior colleague who said that even nominations should be done by IEBC, Mr. Speaker. Some of the people, some of good leaders have been lost. Can I get 30 seconds, Mr. Speaker? Some of the people have lost their seats because of bungled nominations, Mr. Speaker. Many people who have seen nominations will tell you it's not an easy process. And where you come from sometimes,
I now call upon Senator Sotsi to contribute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to also make my contribution on this very important bill, the Election Amendments Bill 2024, that is a product of the Nadco process. And I'm happy that this House has already dispensed with the Political Parties Act that is now supposed to go to Committee of the whole House. And now we are handling the Election Amendments Bill. Mr. Speaker, I want to support the provisions in this bill, although a few others I have reservations. And let me start by looking at clause 3, which talks about the people who register as voters during the by-election process should ideally not be eligible to contest election in that electoral area. You remember we had the long-drawn case of Keith Kilonzo, which many people are questioning why she was not able to contest. But I think it's important that during that period, people who are keen to be candidates should be stopped. Because why at the last minute, Mr. Speaker? So I think that's a very progressive amendment, and I support it. Mr. Speaker, I also want to support Honorable Cherege's statement that election in this country is very expensive. We conduct a very, very expensive election process. And I think the issue of cost of conducting an election in this country must be looked at, so that we don't make election very expensive and therefore make other very important national programs derail because of election. Mr. Speaker, let me also comment on what is happening now, Mr. Speaker, where we don't have IBC. It is a pity that this country does not have an IBC, Mr. Speaker. This is a very risky IBC commission. What we have is an IBC secretariat. We don't have an IBC commission. It is important that the courts also have to take judicial notice of what is happening in the country. Because without an IBC, Mr. Speaker, we run the risk, major risk, constitutional risk in this country. I am surprised that even a mere decision of coming up with a selection committee, people will serve maybe for 3 months. It has dragged in court, and even after the court made a decision on that, some other people rushed to court. Why is the courts entertaining all this? They need to take judicial notice of what is happening to the country. They need to take judicial notice of the fact that unavailability of IBC is a serious problem, a serious risk that can lead to a constitutional crisis. So I think it's important for us to have an IBC so that the by-election, the people of Banisa, the people of several electoral areas who do not have representative, they can have representative in those areas, Mr. Speaker. Some are even not able to get services because they don't have either an MCA or a member of parliament. Going back to the bill, Mr. Speaker, on clause number 18, which is seeking to amend section 33 of the Act, the issue of gazettement of names of political party candidates and independent candidates to contest in an election. I think this is important so that these candidates are properly gazetted, and even the independent candidates are properly gazetted before an election. Also, Mr. Speaker, the amendment to clause section 34, which are contained in clause 19, which talks about the people nominated must be natives of those counties. I think this is important because we have seen scenarios where people come from other counties and are nominated in another county. That effectively discriminates against the locals of that area. For example, if you bring, I know some time back we had in my county someone from Kisii County who was nominated in Vihiga County. I know in Bonhalwale's county, Kakamega, we had someone from Northeastern and Siaya who were nominated in Kakamega. Mr. Speaker, this amendment will heal that. And also the requirement that in nominating candidates, we must take into account the wards, the balance of wards in that county, so that we don't have all nominated slots going to a few wards and you find the other wards being left out, Mr. Speaker. So that is a very progressive amendment and I support it. Mr. Speaker, on clause 20 of this bill, which is seeking to amend section 38 of the Act, that provides that the polling station shall be gazetted at least 3 months before the date of an election. Mr. Speaker, this is very important so that we don't have a scenario where we have late gazettement of polling station that creates confusion, and also we do not have scenarios where during court processes we were told that some ungazetted polling stations were involved in the election. So this is very clear, Mr. Speaker, that at least 3 months before the general election, we must gazette all the polling station in a particular electoral area. If you look at clause 22, which is seeking to amend section 39 of the Act to state categorically that the Commission shall determine, declare, publish the results of an election immediately after the close of the polling station, and the results declared at the polling station shall be final. Mr. Speaker, this is a very progressive amendment, and it is important that we also have transparency in those polling stations so that we have an election observers, we have political party agents, and all the people who are supposed to verify. And Mr. Speaker, going back to the issue of agents, you know, Kenya is among the few countries which are very innovative in very strange ways. You know, if the electoral agency is performing its role very well and doing its work very well and transparently in an accountable manner, then there should not be any burden on candidates to have agents in polling stations. It should be the role of the Electoral Commission. But this idea of having agents in polling station to verify the results is a clear confirmation that our electoral system has something wrong. And that clearly puts a lot of pressure on candidates. You can imagine if you are a presidential candidate in this country with about 45,000 polling stations, putting like 2 people in each polling station, that's already 90,000 people manning your results. And you are paying each maybe 5,000 shillings. Mr. Speaker, even before you do put your name on the ballot, you should already have a budget of $500 million shillings just to manage agents. Mr. Speaker, that is ridiculous. That is undemocratic. So we need to reform our IBC such that there is no pressure for candidates to have agents in the polling station, because the whole process is transparent, the whole process has clarity, and the whole process is protected by a functional commission. Mr. Speaker, I am also concerned about the amendment in section 39, subsection 6, the one that Senator Cheregei was referring to. The chairperson of the commission shall declare the results of the election of the president in accordance with Article 138(10) of the Constitution. Mr. Speaker, this is where we have a problem. And this is one amendment, one area that I will be seeking amendments. The problem with the Cherera 4 was that they were complaining that they were not involved in final verification and review of the results before they were declared. Mr. Speaker, I think this provision must be enhanced further to say that the commissioners will be involved fully before the chairperson of the commission declares the results, so that we don't have a scenario where some commissioners walk out and say that they were not involved in final tallying verification of the results. Mr. Speaker, Clause 23, which seeks to amend Section 44 of the Principal Act that talks about matters of procurement of technology, in this case IT technology. The issue of intellectual property rights to the technology will be vested in the commission. Mr. Speaker, this is very important. This is very important because, you know, during the election, the IBC cited in court that they could not allow access to its technology because the technology is intellectual property of the provider of the technology. And therefore, this can be an avenue to deny access to very important information by Kenyans who would wish to access that information. So this particular amendment is very progressive. Further to it, the supplier of or the associate of this supplier must not be people who are facing issues in their own jurisdiction, like they are guilty of violating the procurement laws, or they have committed a crime, or they have been involved in election malpractices in other countries, this section 44 that has been amended provides for that as well, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, clause 25, which seeks to delete section 45 of the Principal Act. This Principal Act section, Mr. Speaker, talks about the conditions for recall by the public of members of parliament. Mr. Speaker, the current act makes it so difficult to recall a member of parliament. And this was put there deliberately by members of parliament trying to safeguard and beat around corners on the issue of recall. This section has now been removed, Mr. Speaker. So it is going to be very easy to recall a member of parliament, Mr. Speaker, including myself, if I'm not performing. Mr. Speaker, it goes on under section 46, which has also been repealed to deal with all the conditions of recall under section 45 and 46. Mr. Speaker, section 28, clause 28, seeks to repeal section 74 of the Act to provide that disputes due to the nation will be the mandate of political parties tribunal and not IBC. During the election, Mr. Speaker, you have seen that on one hand, the tribunal is dealing with matters of dispute in political parties. On the other hand, IBC is doing the same. That is not the work of IBC. This amendment will ensure that only political parties tribunal will handle disputes between a candidate and his party or between political parties and not IBC. IBC role is misplaced, and that amendment heals that. Clause 29, Mr. Speaker, and amends section 75 to provide that the election petition will terminate at the High Court for county assemblies. We should not have a scenario where the election petition for a county assembly member is taken all the way to Supreme Court. This law now provides that the case will terminate at the High Court. And the same applies, Mr. Speaker, to the section 85A, which is amended under clause 32, to provide that the petition for members of parliament, senators, and governors will terminate at the Court of Appeal, so that the Supreme Court performs the role that the drafters of the Constitution envisaged to do, specific things, and not dealing with the election matters. Mr. Speaker, if you look at clause 31, also, which amends section 82 of the Principal Act, it also provides that access to information. That access to information upon a request to IBC shall be granted within 3 days for presidential election and 7 days for other position. I think for presidential election, because of the limited time, because it has to be done within a limited time. 3 days is a long period of time. I think this should be reduced to 1 day, Mr. Speaker, considering the time constraint in presidential election. Mr. Speaker, clause 32 seeks to amend section 85A of the Principal Act on the issue of decision of the court on petition for members of parliament. I had said that. And Mr. Speaker, clause 33 amends section 87 to provide for the setting up of an independent firm approved by parliament to do evaluation of election, and a host of things will be done here, including reviewing the legal framework, reviewing the register of voters, reviewing the role of the media, reviewing the voter counting procedures, a host of things will be done. And that has to be done within 1 year after the election. Mr. Speaker, that is very progressive amendment, which will basically cure a lot of challenges we are going through, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, election is so important, and I hope that this bill will help us deal with the electoral challenges we have been having in this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I go back to the issue of IBC. IBC, and I want to address the courts. Please, you have every right to receive cases, to process cases, but also listen to what is happening outside the courts. The judicial notice of what is happening outside courts. This country will be in a crisis if there will be need to have an IBC, and there is no IBC. We will have a major constitutional crisis. So I want to call upon the courts to help us to expedite the setting up of a selection committee so that we can appoint the new commissioners who can now conduct by-elections, who can also prepare. We are now just about 2 years and a few months to the next general election, and we don't have an IBC in place. And you remember Kriegler's report said that all preparations to the election must be completed at least 2 years before election. We don't even have an IBC. So we have not even started, Mr. Speaker. So this is a very serious problem, and also the matter of cost of election, which must also be looked at, and also matter of transparency in our election, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that I will support this bill, except for the matter of declaration of the results by IBC chairperson. I believe that if we want to heal the problem of Cherera 4, we must insist that the declaration of results by IBC chairperson must be after concurrency with the other commissioners, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Boni Khalwale.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to strongly support this bill, but with little tweaks here and there. And Mr. Speaker, I'm surprised that Senator Cherera and Senator Osoti, members of this House, who I believe are seasoned and they give serious thought to legislation, are complaining that our elections are too expensive. If you think democracy is expensive, please go and try dictatorship. Please go and try military rule. You will know the difference. And Mr. Speaker, I say this with maximum respect because I know for Cherera in 2007, when the country went bust because of flaws in electoral process, probably he was in kindergarten, so he has no idea how even, Mr. Speaker, sir, your own father, who was a senior member of this House, how they fought so hard to keep the country together. Mr. Speaker, I therefore want to say that our process that looks expensive, it is because we are ahead of many other countries in the world. They'll play catch up and they will start doing what we are doing today. I therefore want to thank the members of Nadco for this particular process that informed this bill. Mr. Speaker, I believe strongly that electoral laws, election laws, should be reviewed regularly as a practice at the end of every electoral cycle. What is important in this belief of mine is that obviously there are lessons that we learn from every election that invite an opportunity for us to make the process better. We should therefore not ever get tired of reviewing our election laws over and over again. Mr. Speaker, it is agreed that an election starts and must end at a polling station. This was not only the intention of the Constitution, but it was also confirmed by the decision of the High Court, which has guided many, many petitions in this country that we have seen, especially the presidential elections. I therefore want to add my voice to this law that is now making it clearer that election will start and end at a polling station. Colleagues, let me tell you about the figure 500. If you are to take a count of 1 up to 500, and you are counting pieces of paper, 1, 2, 3, up to 500, it cannot take an hour. It is within that 1 hour, you can sort out the votes. Abdul, senator, got this, his opponent got this, and then be able to count 1 to 500 and actually be able to get a result in a polling station of what the senator of Wajir got vis-a-vis his opponent. We should defeat the corruption that accompanies the voting process that leads to the delay. In a place like Kisumu, the distinguished professor had to wait for 3 days before he could know his fate. What annoys is that, Mr. Speaker, in my own experience, I have got my own tallying center, counting and tallying center. I know the results because I get feedback from my counting agents in every polling station. Then I'm forced, after knowing the results by around midnight, I'm forced to stay 3 days for what I know to be announced by the returning officer. We should make this the practice, and I'm happy that they have now put in timelines that within 2 hours the results should be announced. Mr. Speaker, the reason why we should insist further is that the people who want to manipulate the electoral process usually count on our agents, counting agents, and our agents at polling station becoming fatigued. Because how will somebody sit in the counting hall, tallying hall, for 3 days, non-stop, and you expect them to be alert enough to guard against rigging? Mr. Speaker, I wanted to speak at length on this issue, but because of the request from the distinguished senator of Nairobi, Senator Mutinda, I want to vacate my contribution earlier so that she can have an opportunity to speak. But I want to request her to allow me to speak so that I am stopped, Mr. Speaker, at exactly 25 minutes past. So could the clerks at the table stop me at 25 minutes past so that I allow Mutinda now to do her bit?
Honorable
Yes.
Senator, I have no problem with you spending less time than you're allocated.
Yeah.
But the procedure in the House is that after you speak, I have to give an opportunity to the other side. And I have Senator
So
Ojienda.
my gift I should give to Professor. I want to appeal to Tabitha I want to appeal to her to accept that, because we are very proud of Professor. Professor, the work you did in court, that was a study in the practice of law. The jibes you were throwing, my 2 young lawyers in my family, my daughter Vivian and my son Sonista, they were very happy with you, the way you conducted yourself in court, and of course, you brought us the right result. Congratulations. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak to the problem of nominations. The nominations, as stated earlier by my colleagues, must cease being the decision of political party leaders. Members of political parties must vote to decide on the party list, so that after members of ODM have voted on all the names of the people who want to be nominated senators, then the women who get the highest number of votes are put on the party list in the order of the number of votes they got, so that it's not the decision of the political party leader. You can see the misguided contribution for the center of Nandi suggesting that party leaders conduct nominations from hotel rooms. I'm surprised that he was not forced to apologize and withdraw. We have distinguished senators here, people like Beatrice Oyoma, people with families, people like Mutinda with families. What message are we sending to their families that they were nominated from rooms? Shame on Senator Cherargei. He is even imputing further improper motive, Mr. Speaker, on senators who are males. Chemera, who are males. Is he suggesting that they are homosexuals? That their party leaders are homosexuals? It's unbelievable that we can degenerate to that level, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've said it before and I want to repeat that people living with disabilities, they should themselves vote amongst themselves to decide who amongst them should represent them and not the decision of political party leaders. I also believe that we should continue amending the laws until we ensure that women reps are elected not universally in the county, but they are elected by fellow women, because they are only women who know who are the best women that should represent them as women reps. If they don't want them to be women reps, then we should amend the constitution not to call them women rep. But because the constitution called them women reps, they should be elected by the people they represent, the women, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, having said that, I now want to give way for our good professor to then inform us on his thoughts on this law I support.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Tom Ojienda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I will take a limited time in contributing to the amendments bill, Elections Bill number 2 of 2024 that seeks to amend various provisions of the Elections Act. Mr. Speaker, I want to agree with the Senator Halwale on the timeless nature of this amendment and on the need to continually amend the Elections Act. Mr. Speaker, 2 points. Number one, Mr. Speaker, tallying at polling stations has been the subject of various election petitions. And the time question that Mr. Senator Halwale has dealt with, signing or filling Form 34As, Bs, and Cs, 35 and 37 for governors, 38 for senators, 39 for women reps, all those, Mr. Speaker, speak to timeframes that are necessary. Elections must and should be concluded at polling stations. The issue of nominations has been sticky, Mr. Speaker, with political parties and party leaders and perhaps technocrats having nominations for individuals from outside specific counties and constituencies. I'm glad, Mr. Speaker, that this bill seeks to rectify that anomaly. And if you are therefore not a registered voter in a particular area, you will therefore not be eligible for nominations. This question of importation, Mr. Speaker, must end. I allowed that amendment because it seeks to cure that anomaly. Mr. Speaker, I have litigated many election anomalies. And this bill is timeless because it comes to cure some of the problems that we have had within the process of conducting elections. Time delays and possibilities, Mr. Speaker, of rigging elections. I also, Mr. Speaker, must laud the time frame for registration of voters and the need for IBC to continue registering voters. However, Mr. Speaker, we must speak to the need of filling the slots that are available or that have not been filled for commissioners of IBC. Mr. Speaker, because of the continuous manner in which the IBC operates, the need for by elections every other time, Mr. Speaker, there's need to urgently ensure that the IBC is fully constituted. And I hope, Mr. Speaker, that our principals and the players within the legislative sector and those who are responsible for ensuring that this process is concluded, and those court cases that are there, Mr. Speaker, should be concluded so that we have a fully operational IBC. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Tabitha Mutinda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, my senior colleagues, for managing the time. I do appreciate. And Mr. Speaker, I start by saying that I do support this amendment bill. And looking at the clauses, especially the clause 19, which, Mr. Speaker, talks about the nomination slots, especially for the members of the county assembly. Mr. Speaker, looking at Senate, where I am specially elected, the Senate does recognize the specially elect through their delegations, and that is determined by where the voting was lastly taken, as in which county that you did vote. And that really applies very well in Senate. And it is important because then you are familiar with your area. For my case, my representation is Nairobi County, and when the bill clearly supports that a person to be nominated as a member of a county assembly should be a registered voter in that particular ward, Mr. Speaker, then yes, it is key, and it's something that I do support. It also gives the particular member of the county assembly serving in that that particular assembly to be able to maximally engage knowingly that the issues concerning that particular area or ward of representation are issues or matters of concern that he or she familiarizes with. We have cases in Nairobi County whereby people have, the members of the county assembly have been nominated from as far as parts of this country, but they are not really familiar with the concerns of Nairobi. They're not able to really understand. And you find that, as you know, most of them, us as members, we normally do mashinani, you know. We go to the ground over the weekends, but at times it becomes difficult because some of these members, they cannot go where they've come from because they don't resonate probably with those areas because they are now serving in a different area. But in the same area that they're serving, then there's little input because in both areas there's no synergy in any way. So it is important, and it is a very important amendment such that these people come from those particular areas that they have voted. It is very important. And you know very well, Mr. Speaker, even before voting, we do a lot of campaigns. And it is in those campaigns that we make manifestos, we give promises to the people. So it becomes easier when a member of county assembly then represents and is nominated from the fact that they vote from that particular area, he or she is in a better place to ensure those promises, the manifestos that they did promise during the campaign trail, they are able to focus on them and ensure that they deliver on the same, unlike when that happens in a different area. Mr. Speaker, the amendment on clause 20, that amendment of 38A, appointment of the polling stations, it is very key because also the voters need to, at an early time, familiarize with their voting polling stations. The 3 months duration, I find it even a bit less. It should be more.
Adjourn the Senate. The Senate therefore stands adjourned until Thursday, 14th November 2024 at 2:30 p.m.